Before we begin this incredible true story, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss amazing stories like this one. Now, let's dive into a moment that changed everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Marcus Chen adjusted his black belt one final time. He had traveled halfway across the world to participate in the International Martial Arts Exhibition, a prestigious event held once every 5 years. 28 years old, with a decade of intense training behind him, Marcus represented his small hometown dojo with fierce pride. His instructor, Master Kim, had saved for 3 years to send him here, believing Marcus possessed something special that the world needed to see. The palace grounds buzzed with energy. As martial artists from 40 different countries prepared for their demonstrations, colorful flags fluttered in the gentle breeze while camera crews positioned their equipment to capture every moment. Marcus watched from the sidelines as practitioners displayed their skills. There were masters of kung fu, creating intricate forms, karate experts breaking thick wooden boards, and taekwondo champions executing gravity-defying aerial kicks. Each performance drew thunderous applause from the gathered crowd of nearly 5,000 spectators. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with nervous excitement. His demonstration was scheduled for late afternoon, right before the closing ceremony. He had choreographed a routine that combined power, precision, and grace. Every movement had been practiced thousands of times until it became second nature. His specialty was the tornado kick, a spinning aerial technique that required perfect timing and incredible leg strength. Master Kim always said that a true martial artist doesn't just perform techniques but tells a story through movement. As Marcus stretched near the preparation area, he noticed the royal guards stationed around the perimeter. These weren't ordinary security personnel. Dressed in immaculate ceremonial uniforms with golden embroidery, they stood perfectly still, like statues. Their presence added an air of formality to the event. The head guard, a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes, supervised his team with military precision. Marcus had heard that these guards trained for years before earning their position, and that they took their duty of protecting the royal family with absolute seriousness. Hours passed as demonstration after demonstration captivated the audience. Marcus warmed up repeatedly, keeping his muscles loose and his mind focused. He visualized his routine over and over, seeing himself execute each technique flawlessly. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Finally, the announcer called his name. Marcus took a deep breath, whispered a quick prayer that Master Kim had taught him, and walked toward the center of the courtyard. The crowd fell silent as he bowed respectfully to all 4 directions, a traditional sign of respect for those watching. This was his moment. Everything he had worked for led to these next 5 minutes. He centered himself, feeling the ground beneath his feet, and prepared to begin the performance that would change his life forever. Marcus began his routine with a series of powerful strikes, each movement crisp and controlled. His hands cut through the air with sharp precision while his footwork flowed like water. The crowd watched in respectful silence, occasionally gasping at particularly impressive techniques. He moved through the traditional forms that honored his martial arts lineage, paying tribute to the masters who came before him. Sweat began to bead on his forehead, but his focus never wavered. Each punch, each block, each stance demonstrated years of dedicated practice. Then came the moment for his signature moves. Marcus prepared for the tornado kick, the technique that had won him 3 national championships back home. He took 3 running steps, launched himself into the air, and began spinning. His body rotated with perfect form, his leg extended at the precise angle Master Kim had drilled into him countless times. Time seemed to slow down as he spun through the air, the world blurring around him. In that suspended moment, Marcus felt completely alive, completely present. But something went wrong. As Marcus completed his rotation and extended his leg for the finishing strike, his foot traveled further than intended. The months of training, the pressure of the moment, the slight unfamiliarity of the palace courtyard surface, something caused his trajectory to shift by mere inches. His foot, moving with tremendous force and speed, connected with something solid. The sickening thud echoed across the suddenly silent courtyard. Marcus landed awkwardly, his heart dropping as he realized what had happened. He had struck one of the royal guards directly in the face. The guard, a young man probably in his mid-20s, with kind eyes and a gentle expression, stumbled backward from the impact. His ceremonial hat flew off his head and skittered across the polished stone floor. The force of the kick had been significant, delivered with the full power of a trained martial artist's technique. The guard's hand instinctively went to his face, where a red mark was already beginning to form on his cheek. Blood trickled from his nose, staining his pristine white gloves. The crowd gasped collectively, a wave of shock rippling through thousands of people simultaneously. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Horror washed over him as he stared at what he had done. The guard he had struck maintained his position, though his eyes watered from the pain. Around the courtyard, the other royal guards tensed, their hands moving toward their ceremonial weapons. The head guard with silver hair took several quick steps forward, his face dark with anger. Camera operators zoomed in, capturing every terrible second of the unfolding disaster. The announcer's voice died in his throat, unable to find words for what everyone had just witnessed. In that frozen moment, Marcus understood the gravity of his mistake. He had just struck a member of the Royal Guard during an international event. In front of thousands of witnesses and dozens of cameras, this wasn't just an accident at a local tournament. This was an international incident. His mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Would he be arrested? Deported? Banned from ever competing again? His chest tightened as he stood there, unable to move, watching the young guard's face contort with pain. Master Kim's life savings had sent him here, and he had just destroyed everything in one terrible, uncontrolled moment. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Marcus dropped to his knees immediately, his black belt touching the cold stone floor. Tears began streaming down his face as he bowed deeply. Pressing his forehead against the ground in the most profound gesture of apology his culture knew, his shoulders shook with the weight of what he had done. Words tumbled from his mouth in desperate succession, apologizing in every language he knew, though his voice cracked with emotion. He had trained his entire life to control his body, to be precise and measured in every movement, and yet he had failed at the most critical moment. The injured guard stood there, one hand still pressed to his bleeding nose. Looking down at Marcus with an expression that was hard to read, pain was evident in his eyes, but there was something else there too. The head guard arrived at the scene, his face red with fury, barking orders in the local language. Two other guards moved forward to restrain Marcus. But the injured guard raised his free hand, stopping them with a simple gesture. The courtyard remained deathly silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped blowing, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Marcus kept his head pressed to the ground, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He thought about Master Kim, who had believed in him when nobody else did. He thought about his mother, who had worked double shifts at the hospital to help pay for his training equipment. He thought about all the young students at his dojo who looked up to him as a role model. He had let them all down with one careless moment. Shame burned through him hotter than any physical pain he had ever experienced in training. Then something unexpected happened. The injured guard knelt down beside Marcus. With his clean hand, the one not covered in blood, he gently touched Marcus's shoulder. The gesture was so surprising that Marcus finally lifted his head, his tear-stained face revealing his anguish. The guard was smiling. Not a mocking smile, not an angry smile, but a genuine warm smile, despite the blood still dripping from his nose. The young guard said something in his native language, words that Marcus didn't understand. But the tone was soft and reassuring. Another guard rushed over with a medical kit and began treating the injured man's nose. But the young guard kept his eyes fixed on Marcus. He gestured for Marcus to stand up, and when Marcus hesitated, the guard reached down and actually helped him to his feet. The crowd began murmuring, confused by what they were witnessing. This wasn't the reaction anyone had expected. Royal Guards were known for their strict adherence to protocol, for their no-nonsense approach to security. Yet here was one of them, bleeding from a martial artist's kick, helping his attacker stand up and smiling at him, The head guard approached, still looking stern, but the injured guard spoke to him rapidly in their language. Whatever he said caused the older man's expression to soften slightly, though he still maintained his authoritative posture. The injured guard then turned back to Marcus and did something that left everyone in the courtyard absolutely stunned. He bowed to Marcus. Not a small nod of acknowledgement, but a deep, respectful bow that honored Marcus as a fellow martial artist. The young guard's action sent ripples of whispers through the crowd. Cameras flashed frantically, capturing this bizarre and beautiful moment that nobody could have. Predicted, the injured guard motioned for someone to bring a translator. A small woman with glasses hurried over, positioning herself between Marcus and the guard. The young man began speaking, his voice clear despite the cotton now stuffed in his nose to stop the bleeding. The translator listened carefully, then turned to Marcus with wide eyes. As if she couldn't quite believe what she was about to say, the guard's words, translated carefully, revealed something remarkable. His name was David, and he had been training in martial arts since he was 7 years old. He had competed nationally before joining the Royal Guard, earning several championships in his youth. When he saw Marcus performing, he recognized the skill and dedication required to execute such techniques. The kick that struck him, David explained, was one of the most perfect tornado kicks he had ever seen in person. The power, the form, the speed, everything was technically flawless. It was simply an accident, a miscalculation of distance that could happen to any martial artist. David continued speaking. The translator's voice grew stronger as she relayed his message. He said that he understood the pressure Marcus must have felt, performing at such a prestigious event. He knew the years of training, the sacrifices, the dedication it took to reach this level. David had walked the same path himself. He recognized a brother in the martial arts, someone who lived by the same code of discipline and respect that had guided his own life. To see Marcus in such distress over an honest accident broke his heart more than the physical pain of the kick itself. Then David said something that made Marcus's tears return. But this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude. David told the translator to announce that there would be no charges, no complaints, no consequences. He insisted that Marcus complete his demonstration. The crowd, which had been listening through the public address system, erupted in applause. The sound was thunderous, echoing off the palace walls. People were standing now, clapping not just for the guard's mercy, but for the beautiful display of sportsmanship and humanity they were witnessing. Marcus couldn't speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. Instead, he bowed to David again and again, each bow deeper than the last, trying to convey the depth of his gratitude through gesture alone. David laughed gently, then did something even more surprising. He removed his ceremonial jacket, beneath which he wore a simple white shirt, and took a fighting stance. He wanted to spar with Marcus. Right there, in front of everyone, with cotton still in his nose and a bruise forming on his face, this royal guard wanted to exchange techniques with the man who had just kicked him. The head guard looked like he wanted to object, but David was already moving. Marcus, still shaken, but unable to refuse such a generous offer, assumed his own stance. They began slowly, exchanging simple techniques, testing each other's responses. David's training was immediately apparent. His blocks were solid, his counters were quick, and his footwork was precise. As they continued, both men began to smile. This wasn't about the accident anymore. This was about two martial artists finding common ground, speaking the universal language of their shared passion. They moved together like dancers, their movements growing more fluid and confident. The crowd watched in absolute fascination, witnessing something far more meaningful than any choreographed demonstration. They were seeing respect, forgiveness, and the true spirit of martial arts on display. For 10 incredible minutes, Marcus and David moved together in the center of the courtyard. They exchanged techniques from their different styles, learning from each other in real time. When Marcus showed a complex spinning back kick, David responded with a beautiful sweep that Marcus had never seen before. When David demonstrated a unique blocking pattern, Marcus countered with a combination that made David nod with appreciation. The other royal guards relaxed their tense postures, some even smiling as they watched their colleague engage in this impromptu demonstration. Master Kim had always taught Marcus that martial arts was about more than fighting. It was about building bridges between people, about respect and honor, about controlling yourself before controlling your opponent. As Marcus moved with David, he finally understood what those words truly meant. Here was a man he had accidentally injured who had every right to be angry, choosing instead to turn a disaster into a moment of connection. The bruise on David's face was already darkening, visible to everyone, yet he moved without complaint or hesitation. Eventually, both men were breathing hard from the exertion. They stepped back simultaneously and bowed to each other with deep respect. The crowd erupted again, this time with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. People were cheering, whistling, and applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Camera operators had captured every moment, and photographers were snapping pictures frantically. The event organizers, who had initially looked panicked when the accident occurred, now wore expressions of amazed relief. This had turned from a potential international incident into one of the most memorable moments in the exhibition's history. David retrieved his ceremonial jacket and put it back on. Wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his sore face, the medical staff approached him again, insisting on properly examining his injury. As they led him away, David turned back and gave Marcus a thumbs up, his smile visible even around the fresh bandage now covering his nose. Marcus watched him go, still processing everything that had happened. His hands were shaking. Marcus to complete his original demonstration if he wished. Marcus looked out at the crowd, at all the faces watching him expectantly. He thought about everything that had just transpired. He thought about David's incredible grace and forgiveness. He thought about the lesson he had just learned about what it truly meant to be a martial artist. Taking a deep breath, Marcus returned to the center of the courtyard and bowed once more. This time, when Marcus performed, something was different. His movements carried a new depth, a new understanding. He executed each technique with the same precision as before. But now, there was meaning behind every strike, every block, every stance. He was no longer just demonstrating physical skill. He was telling a story about humility, about mistakes, about forgiveness, and second chances. When he reached the point in his routine where the tornado kick would normally occur, Marcus paused. The crowd held its breath. Then Marcus performed the kick again, but this time with perfect control, stopping it inches short of where any person would stand. The crowd went wild, understanding the symbolic importance of that moment. Marcus had learned his lesson, had grown from his mistake, and was now better for it. Marcus completed his demonstration and bowed to the crowd one final time. As he walked off the performance area, several other competitors approached him, patting his back and offering words of encouragement in various languages. The international martial arts community had witnessed not just an accident, but a powerful example of the values they all claimed to hold dear. Marcus felt exhausted, emotionally drained, but also strangely at peace. What had started as the worst moment of his life had transformed into something unexpectedly beautiful. That evening, during the closing ceremony, the event organizers made a special announcement. They called both Marcus and David to the stage together. David appeared with a proper bandage on his face and what would clearly become an impressive black eye. But he walked with his head held high and that same gentle smile. The head of the organizing committee spoke about how martial arts was ultimately about character, not just technique. He praised David for his grace and forgiveness, and Marcus for his humility and sincere remorse. The committee presented both men with special recognition awards, commending them for embodying the true spirit of martial arts. The video of the incident and its aftermath went viral within hours. News outlets around the world picked up the story, not as a scandal, but as an inspiring tale of sportsmanship and humanity. David gave interviews where he spoke eloquently about forgiveness and the bond between martial artists. Marcus did the same, talking about the importance of humility and taking responsibility for mistakes. The two men exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch, a promise they would keep for years to come. When Marcus returned home 3 days later, he was shocked to find Master Kim waiting at the airport with dozens of students from the dojo. They had seen the videos online and were proud beyond words. Master Kim embraced Marcus tightly, tears in his eyes. telling him that he had honored their school in ways that winning 100 trophies never could. The local news wanted interviews. The mayor wanted to recognize him. But Marcus just wanted to get back to training, to continue growing as both a martial artist and as a person. 6 months later, David visited Marcus's hometown. He took vacation time from his duties as a royal guard specifically to train at Marcus's dojo and meet Master Kim. The two men spent a week together, training during the day and talking late into the night about martial arts, life, and philosophy. David taught several classes to the dojo students, who were thrilled to learn from a real royal guard. Master Kim officially made David an honorary member of their school, a gesture that moved the young guard deeply. The friendship between Marcus and David became legendary in martial arts circles. They visited each other regularly over the years, trained together at competitions, and eventually co-wrote a book about their experience titled The Accidental Brotherhood. The book became required reading at many martial arts schools, used to teach students about the values that should guide their training. Marcus never forgot the lesson he learned that day in the palace courtyard. Every time he taught a new student, every time he demonstrated a technique, he remembered David's smile, despite the blood and pain. He remembered that true strength isn't just about powerful kicks or perfect forms. True strength is about how you respond when things go wrong, about choosing forgiveness over anger. It's about seeing the humanity in others, even in difficult moments. That one terrible, beautiful day changed Marcus's life forever, teaching him that sometimes our biggest mistakes can become our greatest lessons, and that grace and forgiveness are the most powerful techniques any martial artist can master. The bruise on David's face had faded within weeks, but the impact of his kindness would last a lifetime.